Number 10. The AHC-1 Air Cycle. The idea behind the Air Cycle was to develop a cheap helicopter for wartime so that our boys could easily zip around and spy on the enemies. This death trap was designed to be controlled entirely by shifting the body's weight around. However, this was no Segway. Its maneuverability was crap, but that wasn't the reason why this project was eventually scrapped. Apparently the two rotating blades had a bad habit of crashing into each other and exploding. Number 9. The Lockheed XFV Salmon. The Lockheed SVX Salmon was designed as a plane that could take off in line vertically. The U.S. Navy couldn't afford to put large and expensive aircraft carriers in every fleet, so a plane with vertical takeoff capabilities would help expand the Navy's air support, while also looking badass. There was just one problem. The Salmon were terrifying to land. Test flights were successful in getting the plane to launch and hover vertically over the landing site. But few pilots were willing to try this out in the first place, and even fewer were willing to try it again. Lockheed drew up plans to redevelop the Salmon to not be so awful, but those plans were eventually scrapped when everyone realized that the plane would be too slow to fare well in combat. Number 8. Convair F-2Y Sea Dart. The Convair F-27 Sea Dart remains to this day the only seaplane to ever break the sound barrier. This plane was developed because there was no safe way to launch a supersonic plane from an aircraft carrier. During a demonstration for naval officials and the press in 1954, the plane disintegrated in midair. Number 7. The Kopernik 60. This plane was created back when aviation was new and everyone was still trying to figure out the whole physics thing. The Kopernik came from an idea that more wings would mean that bigger things could fly. Sure, things may have ended badly, but this weird plane did manage to get 60 feet in the air before beginning its first and last descent. Amazingly, the pilot escaped the wreckage unharmed. Number 6. The Vought V-173 Flying Pancake. This Vought V-173 was designed by Charles Zimmerman, and while it may look like it would never leave the ground, it actually managed to fly 190 test flights over Connecticut. It also became the subject of numerous flying saucer sightings. Despite being designed in the 1940s, this plane was able to accomplish a near vertical takeoff and landing, was remarkably easy to maneuver and found to be almost indestructible. When the brakes locked up on a landing, the plane actually flipped over onto its back, but neither the pilot nor the plane suffered any damage. Number 5. The Goodyear Inflatop Plane. At first glance, this plane does not seem all that strange, but one look at the name, Inflatop Plane, and you can probably guess what makes this aircraft so extraordinary. The Inflatop Plane was created by Goodyear during the World War II era. It could be inflated by a single soldier and take off in less than 300 feet. However, the plane had one very big problem. It was inflatable. And as it turns out, inflatable objects are also pretty fragile. If you are planning a peaceful joyride, an inflatable plane might be cool. However, this plane was ordered by the military for use in wartime. It was as fragile as a balloon, and things like bullets could easily bring it down. Number 4. The Hiller X-18. The Hiller X-18 was conceived in 1955 and had its first flight in 1959. This plane was the testing ground for tilt-wing and vertical takeoff and landing planes. The plane had 20 successful flights, but it was discovered that the wings had difficulty rotating when there were high winds. Regardless, the ideas that were pioneered by this plane continued to be researched and developed for a number of years. Number 3. Curtiss-Wright VZ-7. This unique creation definitely belongs on any list of strange aircraft. It was designed in 1958 as a flying jeep for the U.S. Army. The aircraft was reportedly easy to fly and featured 4 propellers that were attached on both sides of the fuselage. While it was able to perform the tasks requested, it was not able to meet the Army standards and was therefore discontinued. Number 2. The V-12. Even though there were only 2 prototypes of this plane built in the late 1960s, it remains to this day as the largest helicopter ever created. The helicopter raised eyebrows among engineers when it was first unveiled, and it was issued a number of awards and is the holder of several world records. By the time the helicopter was ready for production, more efficient alternatives had been developed, and the project was discontinued. Number 1. North American X-15. This plane was so fast, it had to take off from another plane going full speed. The X-15 is little more than a rocket with a cockpit just large enough for a pilot. It was developed in the 1960s and broke all kinds of speed and altitude records. It was even able to reach the edge of space, bringing back valuable research information for scientists at NASA. It is also one of the few aircraft that was able to bring its pilots more than 50 miles high, earning them astronaut